Over the years, we've enjoyed grants from Mitsubishi, from Fujitsu, from the Nippon Foundation. And we have another one now for the Nippon Foundation for Ukraine. They're organizing a grant for that. You have to apply, and there's a lot of paperwork.
Right.
And there was one for Toyota the other day, which is like 300 pages of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Zoom, just contact me.
TEL,
Yeah.
which stands for Tokyo's English Lifeline.
That's right, but we don't use that anymore. It's just TEL now.
Okay.
So, but you can refer it to it like that.
Is that right?
That's the origin of the name.
So what do you call it now?
TEL. Just TEL.
Okay, just because that's what you're doing.
In large letters, yeah.
Okay.
TEL.
TEL.
T-E-L-L.
Oh, okay.
I'm the executive director there.
Okay, how long have you been executive director?
Just since last July.
Is that right?
So coming up to 1 year, going into my second year.
Wow. Giles, first of all, and I said it right, Giles.
Yes, it's Giles. Yeah.
Giles.
Yeah.
I will not say Giles.
In French, it's Gilles.
It's Gilles.
Gilles.
But do you speak French?
Not really, no.
Okay, all right. But Giles, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I mean, we've spoken before. You told me just earlier that we had kids in the same school, the British school.
That's right.
Wow, at the same time.
I think so.
It had to be around the same time.
I met you for the first time then.
And I was only African American at that school at the time.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yes.
I'm a car guy, and I remember your car. I think it was a Jag or something.
Yes. Let me ask, where were you born?
I was born in Chile, in Santiago.
In Santiago.
Yeah, in South America.
Okay. And you're one of 5 children.
I'm one of 5 children, yes.
So your parents are either Protestant or Catholics?
A mix. My father's Protestant and my mother's a Catholic.
So it worked out well.
I think the right balance, yes.
And you told me there's 15 years between you and the oldest?
That is correct.
How are your siblings doing? Are they all okay?
2 of them have passed away, but my oldest brother and second oldest brother are still alive.
Okay.
My oldest brother's living in Princeton, actually, in the US.
Okay.
My second oldest is living in Poland.
Now, how did it go? The oldest was what? The oldest child in the family?
Yeah.
Was female or male?
Male.
And he's still alive?
He's still alive. Yes, he had a stroke about 25 years ago, but before that he emigrated basically to the US.
Okay.
And has lived there ever since.
In the US?
In the US.
Where in the US is he living?
In Princeton.
In Princeton?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about in England.
No,
Okay.
in the Princeton.
Okay, Princeton, okay.
That Princeton.
Wow.
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
It's a lovely place.
Okay. Yeah. And the second was a girl or boy?
The second was a boy.
Okay, but he passed?
No, he's alive. He was born in Hungary,
okay,
which is where my father was stationed at the time.
Okay.
He's still alive. He's living in Poland, which is kind of,
right.
Yeah, at the moment. But he's married to a Polish lady, and so he lives in Poland.
And they have children?
They have 2 children, yeah.
Okay. You've gotten a chance to see your nieces and nephews?
I saw his daughter about 3 years ago, actually, in Japan, because she works for IAEA, which is the atomic, and she came over here to check out Fukushima.
Now say it again, IEA?
IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Association, which is the worldwide association that governs, sort of sets the rules for atomic plants, nuclear plants, and so she came to check out on.
Number 3 was?
Number 3 is my sister, who was married to a Japanese here. She passed away.
Was she here for a long time?
She was here for a long time. In fact, she's the reason I'm here now, is because she said, in 1980 or 81, I think it was 81, come out here for a quick holiday.
Was she in Tokyo, based in Tokyo?
Yes, she was. She had stayed on after my parents departed in 1977, and she'd gotten married in 1974 4, I think, to a Japanese man.
Right. And she had children?
And she had 6 children.
6 children?
Yes, and they're all well.
Okay. No.
Yeah, my sister was born in Athens, which is where they were stationed next.
And she's passed?
She's passed, yeah,
Okay.
about 20 years ago. But she was married to a Japanese guy, president of a graphic design company.
Okay.
He passed a couple of years ago, but they had 6 children.
Whom are here?
They're all over the place. In England, one's here, various other places around the world. We seem to sort of disperse.
But you stay in contact with each other?
I do. One of them's actually quite well known. She's an actress, Sonoya Mizuno, who's appeared in La La Land and Ex Machina. I think she's quite well known.
She played a major role in that, Ex Machina?
Ex Machina, she had a major role, I think, and then also La La Land, she was a minor role, but she's mainly a dancer and a sort of model, and so.
Okay. And she's married and has kids now too? Or?
No, she's single. She's
Okay.
single, but some of the other children are married.
Okay. And she knows you as her uncle and.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So then the 4th one would be who?
4th one is the brother above me, but still 7 years separate, and he passed away.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In-
Where did he live?
He lived in England, actually.
Okay, the only one. We followed the English line.
Yes, you're right, the only one. Actually, my sister, after he died, she moved back to England. She got divorced from my brother-in-law.
Okay.
And moved with the kids back to England. So she lived there for 10 years. But he was actually the only one who really lived in England.
Wait, she got divorced from her Japanese husband?
Yes, she did.
And she took all of the kids to England?
She took all of them to England.
There
all
was 6 of them, right?
6 of them, and they were quite small at the time, yeah.
So they grew up English?
They grew up in England, so their Japanese language ability is not very good.
But then one came back, the one that's the actress.
The actress one is, actually, I think she's in Los Angeles, but one of them came back and lives here.
Okay.
The oldest sister, the oldest.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
So your father was a diplomat.
Yes.
Okay, and you were the last child, so were you surprised, or did they plan to have another, was your mother and dad, she said, look, I want to have another child?
I think it was a surprise more
Okay.
than anything, I think.
Right.
It
And
was
being Catholic and Protestant, you were going to be born.
I'm going to get born, yeah. It's one
Thank
of those
goodness.
things.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I think
I think my parents were a very loving
that's right.
couple. They were, right until the end. So
They've passed.
they've passed, yes.
Right.
Both within about 3 or 4 months of each other. So
Who went first?
my mother went first.
Your father was such a man,
Yeah.
He couldn't do it.
He couldn't
He couldn't
handle
let her
it.
leave without her, yeah.
Right. And that was in 84.
Did they die peaceful deaths at home or?
At home, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
Mm.
How old was your father when he passed?
My father was 69, which
That's young.
that's far too young.
But he'd worked hard too, though.
He'd done a
Traveled
lot.
all
He
over
was
the world, yes.
and he was still working when he passed away. He'd retired because from the for the Foreign Office.
Right, right.
But he was doing a lot of JALT stuff. Do you know JALT, the
Yes.
Japan Association of Language Teachers?
No, I don't know JALT. No.
But it's a service that provides English language teaching assistance
Mhm.
to Japanese schools, and
Okay.
everybody worldwide goes on it. And he would vet people, kids, mostly kids who are either still in university or just left university.
So, Giles, so when you were in school, where did you do your schooling, since you were all over the world?
I was in the Nishimachi until the end of junior high.
So you remember Mrs. Matsukara?
Oh, absolutely. Remember her very well.
I used
We usually had a police car sitting out front because it was the Arab-Israeli war, and it was Northern Ireland, and you had all these kids from all these different nationalities who were all great friends with each other.
They sure were.
Yeah, but there usually was a police car stationed.
So did you go all the way through Nishimachi up until the 8th grade? I think they went up to the 8th or 9th.
It went up to the 9th. I started in 2nd grade and I went up to the 9th. Actually, when I came to Japan, I entered St. Mary's. My next brother upwards went to the American school for a couple of years.
All right. So anyway, so you did Nishimachi, you finished there. Then from Nishimachi, you went where?
I went to the Yokohama International School for a year.
What made you decide to go to Yokohama International School?
My father put me into the YIS because it does the British examination system, the O levels and the A levels.
It does, yes.
And he didn't want to put, well, yeah, he thought that I wouldn't be able to take them if I went into the American school.
I don't think at that time you could have.
No, you probably can now, but
Right.
but at the time you couldn't do it, and it was, I don't know what the difference is between going all the way to Yokohama or going all the way to Chofu is, but I suppose.
And you took the train.
I took the train going the other way, so that's.
Right. And you went to Motomachi and got off at Motomachi and walked up the hill, or?
Got off at Sakuragicho, which at that time was a station on the Toyoko line.
Right.
It isn't anymore.
Right.
And then took a bus up the hill.
Okay.
So it was quite a hike.
Wow.
And that was fun.
YS. So when you went to YS, what was it like? What'd you get? Because it's different than Nishimachi.
Oh, it was interesting. Well, it was more British, but they had sort of film classes, and there was a music teacher who liked to toy around with synthesizers, and we could make our own films. I mean, it's like this,
That's right,
interesting.
that's right.
Just shoot stuff and add soundtracks to it. It was fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did you study? What were you more academic or were you more sports-minded?
I'm sort of more academic, although I didn't really realize that to the utmost of its potential, I think. So
what did you like to study?
I like to study, and I still like to study sort of things, literature, English literature, that kind of history, not so much sort of mathematics, although I can do sort of basic finance.
What type of literature did you like to read?
Mostly, I mean, anything in English, really. Not so much Japanese, more English or American literature.
Oh, I see. So did you do any sports at all?
Well, at YIS, I don't think there was much of a venue for sports.
There was nothing.
Really.
You guys
There was
had
nothing. And then my father retired, that was 1977, and we went back, and he was posted back to the UK.
Okay.
So I went into the sort of examination system to get into university,
Right.
and did my O levels and A levels, and then after about 3 years of fiddling around with that, doing 1 year of O levels and 2 years of A levels.
Studying, what was your focus?
Japanese, because I spoke it.
Okay.
And I did the Japanese O level and Japanese A level, and I got those.
Right.
Sociology, which at that time was sort of a very Marxist bent, but it was there when it was something I could do. And English literature, which I started to hate because it was, it was just too medieval, I think. The O level, it was, what's his name? Chaucer, which I can't stand. Yeah, poetry. Yeah, it's very difficult to understand. But I passed that as well.
Okay.
Passed my A levels, got the required A levels to go to university, but then my sister said, I was undergoing some sort of family problems at the time with my brother, and I also, the next brother upwards, and also I wasn't really hanging in with the right crowd in London at the time. It was a rather depressed.
Well, you had spiky hair and...
Sorry?
You had spiky hair and you were...
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much
No,
on
you
that.
didn't.
No, I didn't have spiky hair, but
What were you doing? Well, but you were really hanging out with the wrong crowd.
I was probably hanging out with the wrong crowd, and she said, why don't you come out to Japan? She was here for, a holiday, just get you out of that. My brother was a bit of a bully, and, he wasn't treating me perhaps with the respect. But
he thought he was your surrogate father or something, or...
Oh, yeah, he was the cutest guy in the family until I came along, so he didn't really like that. And so she got me to come out here, which is what I did, rather than going to university.
Okay.
I mean, I had intended to go.
But you finished college, what?
I didn't finish college.
You didn't finish, so you never went to university?
I never went to university, much dread.
Okay.
But when I came out here, my sister had been working in the music industry with CBS Sony.
Okay.
Really just transcribing lyrics and stuff, listening, those lyric sheets that you get in the albums, and listening to the lyrics and then transcribing them.
Right.
I was just hanging around, not really doing anything, just enjoying my holiday here on a tourist visa. Well, maybe I shouldn't say this. And she said, people at CBS or Sony Music they needed, someone to, there was a bit of the number of, there was a sort of growing sort of trend to sell music overseas, Japanese music, so they needed someone to correct the pronunciation in the studio, in the recording studios, and also do lyrics. I don't want to do this because I'm bringing up children, is what she said. Oh. And then, so she offered me, the opportunity, and I took it.
Okay.
And I ended up doing a lot of, recording, working in the studio with a lot of Japanese artists, also writing lyrics and helping with pronunciation, and I did this for up to about 5 years, I think, 5 or 6 years, while doing other jobs, of course. But
what were the other jobs? Well, like teaching English?
I was teaching English. I fell into that, because you didn't always get these recording jobs all the time. So I taught English. I taught English at Berlitz for 3 years, which was very tough, but
it paid well.
Yeah, it paid well.
But this is during the bubble.
This is during the bubble, so it's in
there's
Nihonbashi.
money everywhere.
There's money everywhere. It's the foreign exchange guys. It's the guys from the Bank of Japan who can talk about finances, but they can't say that they've spilt their coffee or something. They cannot say that. And I saw it actually happen.
That's right.
So that was good. It was 12, 13 hours a day of sitting in a small room with some guy, or if you were lucky, perhaps opposite gender person.
That's right, and be a little more pleasant,
Yeah, more pleasant perhaps. Right. But I did that for 3 years. While I was doing that, I was also doing recordings and things like that. So quite a tough time for me. But that paid even better.
Of course.
And in some cases, I still have the copyrights to some of those songs, so I get royalties even now.
Because you wrote them. Those
I
are
wrote
songs.
I wrote the lyrics.
And you still get royalties.
I still get royalties. Yeah.
Well, how many songs do you think you wrote?
I probably wrote about. I don't get the royalties for all of them, but probably about 50 or 60. So.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting business to be involved in, because it's like insurance annuities. You keep on getting it. It doesn't stop as long as you're alive.
It doesn't stop paying as long as the copyright's there for,
right,
I think, 70 years, I think it is.
70 years?
In Japan, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of these were quite major artists, like the Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Yes.
Or the Mods or Kodomo Band.
You mean you wrote their songs?
I did some of the solo works for the Yellow, especially Hosono-san. Haruo Hosono, who I reckon is the best bassist,
right?
Whose grandfather was a Titanic survivor.
Was he?
And he used to tell me this story. It's fantastic in the studio. I wrote 4 songs with him. No, 5, which I still get royalties.
Yeah. You never forget that.
Nearly 40 years ago.
Wow.
So
that's beautiful. So that's something you'll always remember. It'll always be with you.
And so then my name was on CDs, on albums.
So they're there. So they're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. So that's interesting.
Well, so your names are very interesting. Giles Duke.
Giles Duke. Giles Richard Hare Duke.
Giles R. Duke. Did you put R. Duke or did you put Richard?
Sometimes Giles R.H. Duke, or sometimes just Giles Duke, or sometimes they'd screw it up and it would be Duke Giles, or...
Wow.
So, yeah.
And your father's Duke. The last name Duke.
Duke. It was Hare Duke. It was a double-barreled surname, but I think they took it off and just kept that as a middle name. So it was Duke.
All right. Have you done your DNA? Have you gone through that?
I haven't, no.
All right. I would think that you might be interested in being involved in literature and going back and wanting to know what your ancestry is.
Well, my father always said we were descendants of Oliver Cromwell, but I never quite believed that. I've heard that several times from other people as well, but no.
But you can find out so easily now.
I think you can, yeah.
Oh yeah, you can mail it in and find out, and you boop, 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 boop.
After teaching English, I was hired by a direct marketing company. This is all through my sister's husband, really, who used to do design work for the Japanese equivalent of what was the Franklin Mint. Do you remember the Franklin Mint?
Yes, I remember Franklin Mint, yes.
Coins and cars and vases and that kind of stuff. But this was a Japanese version set up by people who had been employed by the Franklin Mint. So I was working, doing that for 3 years.
Doing what would you do?
Basically, it was a lot of translation because they did have a lot of licenses with museums in the US. Or we did a replica of the Emperor's Mercedes-Benz car that he used to, the old Emperor, the Showa Emperor. Right. So I used to do the contract for that. Also, they had a branch company in Princeton, which my brother ran. So we were both in the same company. Kind of weird.
And which brother? The oldest?
The oldest brother.
The one that was kind of a bully.
No, that's my brother next to me.
Oh, that was the one next to you.
Yeah.
So your older brother and you got along, but you said, so the one next to you was the cutest until you came along.
That's right.
7 years. Oh, I'm thinking about the oldest. Okay.
Yeah, the oldest.
He was good.
Yeah, the oldest was here when I came to Japan for my second sojourn. And then he got this job with this direct marketing company, and then he was sent out to the States to run their US operations to Princeton.
Where he still is, yeah.
Yeah, where he still is, although he's not employed by that company anymore. But and so I joined that company, but in Japan, and doing sort of communications with him. Back then, it was actually we did it by telex or by fax.
Didn't you? Right. You had to go down there and get the message. You had to go down to Marunouchi, didn't you? Didn't telex? Oh, you had a telex machine in your office?
We had a telex machine in our office, which is the height of.
I'm telling you, guys were rolling.
Really, wow! This big
telex machine. Come in real time.
Yeah, real time. It comes, sort of, something out of like the Hunt for Red October.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
So how long did you and your brother work together?
We worked together for 3 years, but then the owner of the company wanted me to work for his real estate company in Japan. So I went there, and that was in Kyobashi, and I went there for 7 years, which is kind of a waste of my life, really, I think.
That was your brother-in-law?
That wasn't, no, this was, my brother-in-law was the owner of a graphic design company.
No, who'd you say you went to work with? Who when you went to?
The owner of the direct marketing company.
Okay.
It's a bit complicated.
Right.
And he owns a real estate company.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah, and he wanted me to help him with his US and New Zealand investments.
Okay.
So I sort of helped him manage those.
Right.
In this real estate company, but I also still continued to work for the direct marketing company, which was under the umbrella. It's confusing, I know.
No.
But my brother was there, and, and I would translate. And if fashion designers would come to Tokyo, I'd translate for them and do that kind of thing. But at the same time, I was also doing this guy's taxes in Texas, and where he had investments, or in New Zealand and things like that. And that was rather a difficult time, I think. I worked for. It was a very traditional domestic company, a real estate company, and ladies in uniforms bringing the tea, and
that's right.
guys smoking and drinking every night.
How old were you at this time? Around this time?
I was sort of 30, early 30s.
Had you met your wife yet?
I'd met my wife. I'd married my wife. I married her when I was 25 years. Well, she worked for my sister's husband's graphic design company.
Okay.
And I used to hang around there because there were quite a lot of female persons.
Right.
And that was a sort of stock of available women.
Right there. You have to go into the ocean.
You
right
have
there in that little pond right there.
That's where I didn't know anybody else. I mean, record companies, they're not going to have any, any studios, So, or in Berlitz, not really. And she was an accountant there.
Right.
She was the Cady person, and we just used to hang around, and I used to hang around with the other designers, and we used to sort of play music or go bowling or...
You play music?
Well, sort of very badly.
What do you play?
The bass, but I'm
Okay.
hopeless, absolutely hopeless.
Okay. 4 or 5 strings?
Yeah, 4.
Four
Oh, come
strings.
on.
Nobody would play.
Lots.
Real bassists would never do 5 string, right?
No, the good ones nowadays are all 6 or...
Oh, they're doing 6?
Yeah, 6.
Okay,
You
but I
work
hear
down
that
to
a traditional bassist is 4 strings.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, with no frets. You know.
That's right.
But I was doing with frets. This was a Fender.
Okay.
Yeah. Even then, it's quite difficult. It's not easy.
Wow.
I love the bass. Anyway.
When did you start playing bass? At St.
When I was
Mary?
20. No, when I was in my 20s.
Oh, in your 20s? Okay.
Yeah. So, the designer guys would want to form a band. They didn't have a bassist, so you do it. So I would play really badly.
Okay, so you met your wife, you got married, had your son,
Right.
who's now in his 30s, right? So
He's 36.
36.
Yeah.
My goodness. So was it difficult for you at that time when you married your wife? Because where's your wife from originally?
My wife is from Saitama.
She's right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And does she have a big family? I mean, she have siblings?
She has siblings. She has, I think, 4? I think she's 4 sisters and 1 son. So, and she's the oldest. So it's the other way around.
She's number 1.
She's number 1.
What kind of cars do you like?
I have a thing because I was brought up here for 70s Japanese vehicles.
Okay.
And also 1970s French cars. Quite odd. Also Chevrolet Camaros, that kind of stuff. I don't like the 60s ones. I like the 70s ones. The Pontiac Trans Am. They're sister cars.
So tell me this. So what made you decide to get involved with TEL?
Very interesting. At 60, the last couple of years until I retired from Universal Music, I was in their HR department. Actually, I'd done HR before at BMG back in the early 2000s. And I was personally in charge. I was their chief HR specialist, but I was personally in charge of dealing with mental health care issues at Universal Music, just as sort of COVID was coming in and people were stuck at home. It was lockdown.
Right.
They closed the office, basically. You couldn't come in without a special sort of permission from your manager. And so I handled a lot of these cases and dealing with employees who would work for a whole week without any sort of communication with anyone. And some of them were having mental issues, and we would arrange interviews for them with clinical psychologists and try to resolve the issue. In some cases, unfortunately, they had to leave.
Do you find among the sexes it's slanted towards one way versus the other? Like more men are involved or more women are involved in the ones that have problems? Or do you think it's pretty even?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think it's pretty much even.
Okay.
Right. Unless it's, something like a sexual harassment issue, which actually wasn't such a major issue.
Anymore?
Not so much anymore.
It used to be a big issue.
It used to be a big issue.
Yeah, especially during the bubble, because I remember they said even the airline attendants were going nuts because the guys would get on the planes and just go crazy.
Right, absolutely.
They sure would. They'd go crazy.
And
especially Japanese airlines, yes.
Close proximity
That's
to
right.
these women. And they are very attractive in many cases.
So what do we find you doing nowadays, guys? Well, you just mentioned that. That's what you do, right?
Right, exactly.
That's
So
what
I
you
did 20 years
no.
in BMG and then EMI and then Universal Music, and then I came to TEL to run it, basically. I'm not a psychologist or a clinician or a specialist, so
you don't have to take any of the calls. You don't take
absolutely not.
Okay.
That requires training. And actually, I think we're just about to finish some of.
And you're hiring people now too, because I see that on your. Are you?
Yes, we're hiring people.
Yeah.
Yep, we're
to do what?
We're growing. We're growing. Well, firstly, we've the lifeline and then the clinic have been the two mainstay pillars of the TEL operation. The lifeline is the core of it, really, and that's how TEL started back in 71 or 72. It was started by Christians, actually, just to deal with foreigners who'd come to Japan and they'd feel lonely or stressed out, or they couldn't deal with the culture, and they had issues as a sort of suicide, not as an actual suicide lifeline.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's been kept going through the years very successfully.
What year did it start?
70, I think Inochi no Denwa, which is the Japanese version of that, Inochi Lifeline, started in 71 or 72.
Because I believe it started maybe it already existed when I came, because I came in 74.
Okay, it was already here.
I think it was already here then.
And then they saw the need for one that would deal with non-Japanese language speaking people. So they set up TEL, which at the time was the Tokyo English Lifeline, and that's what it was called. Right. And it was set up by, I forget his name, it was a Japanese reverend who started it, but Christians. And it's not affiliated now. And that's been kept going for, actually next year we're having our 50th anniversary, so a half a century. Wow. We have telephone and chat.
What's the difference between the telephone and the chat?
Well, telephone is someone on the other end of the phone.
Right. And chat is just text?
It's text.
Okay.
So now about 70% of our calls are chat.
When did you start doing that?
A few years ago.
Okay.
It's quite recent.
Wow.
So that's growing. Unfortunately, well, I think last year we had nearly 8,000 interactions on the Lifeline alone. Wow. And on Clinic, which is also, unfortunately, it's growing because of COVID. And, last year, the UN has just reported that there was a 25% growth in anxiety and depression worldwide. Okay. So the clinic is growing. Last year we had 14,000 sessions.
The clinic means this isn't a place you go, it's just what it's called.
It can be a place you can go. We do have a clinic inside the TEL office.
And where's the TEL office?
The TEL office is in Minami Aoyama.
Okay.
And there's another one in Okinawa.
Okay, so you have two.
We have two offices, yes. A lot of our clinical sessions are online, but where the case involves children, then we have to have it face-to-face. Okay. The clinician will come into the office and meet in a separate area, private, where we're working in the office, and most of our work is done, hybrid. It's a hybrid work from home or work in the office. We don't know who's there, so it's completely private and completely shut out. I have no knowledge who the
person is,
or the patients are. So it's even more stricter on the Lifeline. I have absolutely no knowledge who's calling me. Sorry.
But from what age?
That's a very good question. I hear it's from about 7 or 8.
The kids can come in from 7 or 8?
Yes, but they must come in with their parents, absolutely.
From what age can they come in without a parent?
That is, I think it's 18.
They have to be 18?
Yeah.
Okay. So if they're 17, they must come with a parent?
Yes. With their guardian.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And then how long do the sessions last, or do they have to pay for these sessions?
Yes. Psychological sessions are not covered by the Japanese national insurance yet, although that is likely to change, hopefully, within the next few years. Depending on the person's income, we can offer subsidized care. Okay. So if you're making a lot of money, you'll have to pay, I'm afraid you have to pay the full rate.
Right.
But if you're on a low income, if you're a low income person, then it's the subsidized rate.
Right.
We do a lot of work for the US military.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we do. A lot of our work in Okinawa and also Tokyo is with the US military.
Well, how do you do that? How does that work out?
Well, we get they can't cover everyone on base, and their insurance company refers the insurance holder to us.
Oh, so the insurance does cover this psychological help?
The US
The US
insurance.
military, okay.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if you have a similar insurance in Japan, which I don't believe, I'm not sure exactly what framework that exists in, that might cover it. But the Japanese national insurance or company insurance doesn't cover it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people come in and they say, well, how long? Well, it can be as long as they need it.
It can be 3 months, 6 months. It could be a year.
2 years, right?
We had a backlog in Okinawa because of COVID, because of the lockdown, people not being able to get off the base at all. Mm-hmm. Quite a few, I think, mental issues.
And you're over both. You're over the one here in Tokyo and the one in Okinawa too.
Yes. Okay. We have Tokyo
Okay.
clinicians who deal online with.
Right. But I'm saying you're in charge of both.
I'm in charge of the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah,
right.
but I don't run the clinic. We have a clinical director,
I
a
see.
very capable American guy called William Cleary,
Okay.
who has all the qualifications. I do not have these qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
The Lifeline is run by Vicky Scorgi, who's Australian. She's been with TEL for 25 years. She's like the motherlode, the mothership,
Right.
and she has the qualifications necessary for that.
Right.
And operating on the Lifeline, the Lifeline is run by volunteers. They're not paid.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, we have to run it, and that costs money.
Okay.
The clinic funds that.
Right.
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 And then last year, since I've come on board, we've grown outreach, which is building awareness, which is going to schools, organizations, embassies. We do a lot of embassy work.
Mm-hmm.
Both community services and corporate services. And from this year, we now have a guy called Mr. Cole Garrett who handles the corporate services.
Okay.
And he will be going out to corporations to assess their mental health care needs. Resilience is growing, especially in companies. There's a growing demand for employee assistance programs, which our clinic can provide, and he's going to go out and sell this. It's something that will help fund TEL, pay for the employees. We are employees. I'm an employee.
Yes.
Pay for the Lifeline, pay for the clinic. But the goal is to one is to grow mental health awareness, and two is to resolve mental healthcare issues.
Right. And I would imagine you would have a lot of kids from the international schools coming to TEL, because that used to be a big, focal point when I was a teacher at the American school.
Right.
When the kids were, especially high schoolers,
Sure.
when they were, reaching puberty and starting to go through these different issues, and their parents may not know what to do because no one teaches us how to parent.
Right. A lot of it is to teach the teachers
Exactly.
how to deal with these issues.
Right.
And there is some events that we've done with parents.
Right.
At the moment, we're looking at mental first aid training for people who are dealing with Ukrainian refugees. So we're doing a lot of that. Actually, there was one session for that. I didn't go to it. I've also been trained in the very basics of that, how to deal with a refugee as he or she, or they come off the plane, they're in
PTSD,
PTSD, all that
right,
sort of
PTSD,
thing.
right.
Just assessing what their immediate needs are.
Mm-hmm.
They've come out from a war zone, they've landed in Japan, they don't know where they are.
Okay.
We do have Ukrainian and Russian speakers and volunteers.
So they
who
have
do
to be
this.
trained.
They have to be trained.
Right.
Mental health first aid is still a very sort of rather young subject in this country. And what we're trying to do is to get, actually it originates in Australia, of all places.
What originates in Australia?
Mental health first aid training, which is...
You mean for your program?
For our program, yes.
Your program, it originates in Australia.
Yeah, we have one of our people is trained in that, but what we want to do is to bring the program over here and have a validated system that will be able to train people in mental health first aid and to get the qualifications for that. And that takes a couple of years and needs a lot of money.
Who do you go to mostly? I mean, how would an individual donate to TAL?
There are various ways. You can be a hero, what we call a hero.
Okay, what's that?
And we need that. That's a 3,000 yen donation per person.
Right, if you got 1,000 people to do that, it wouldn't hurt at all.
We're required by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government to have 300 people do that every year. So
are you?
In order to qualify as an NPO. And that's not a secret. So that's on our website.
Okay. You need 300 people to give 3,000 yen.
And then become a hero.
A hero.
Yeah. We have individual donors who donate from outside the country, from the US, from the UK, from all over the world. We have corporate donors. I'm allowed to say this. I've been asked to say this. We've just received a large grant from Zoom, the video people who are doing quite well, I think.
Here in Japan.
From the US, actually.
Oh, they're donating from the US?
That's right, from the CSR. They have a CSR outreach division. Okay. And I met the lady who's in the US.
The CSR is what?
Corporate social responsibility.
Okay.
And that was a significant amount of money.
All right.
That was a large amount. They had, and this was advertised, I think it was 500 million or 5 billion US dollars to give away.
Oh, they have to give away in total?
Yeah.
So it was a portion of that?
Oh, yeah.
I understand. I mean, you're right.
Yeah, a portion of that. So that allows us to do a lot of lifeline training for this year and also next year, and maybe add another training session. Usually we have 2 lifeline training sessions a year.
Now I'm starting to all come back to me. I know what you have to do. So when you find out these organizations, Zoom or Kellogg's or whoever it may be,
right,
you have to apply and say, here we are, this is what we do. Then they make the decision.
It's different.
Oh, is it?
Over the years, we've enjoyed grants from Mitsubishi, from Fujitsu, from the Nippon Foundation. And we have another one now for the Nippon Foundation for Ukraine. They're organizing a grant for that. Zoom was mostly, I think, it's trust, yeah, and sponsorship. So they'll be sponsoring the Tokyo Tower climb, which we've reinstated for this year in October. So there'll be a bit of Zoom logos there. They paid for it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah. They're not the only sponsor, of course. Right. They'll be sponsoring the Step Up Challenge, which is a similar event over October to celebrate, not to celebrate, but to raise awareness of Mental Health Day. And they'll be sponsoring that, and other sponsors. And they have allowed us to do 1 extra lifeline training.
Right.
And we need to grow the number of volunteers, because the number of foreigners, leaving Japan has dropped. And so it's difficult to get. We need volunteers. The lifeline is in English, so we need English speakers. Obviously we have some Japanese there, but
it's mainly
English speakers. So we need money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's always the case. You will never stop needing money.
We always need money. Please, TEL needs money.
That's right.
We need to prevent suicide, to raise awareness.
Yeah, we can't stop talking about that. That's something you always want to continue to ring the bell on.
Yeah, that's
always.
always.
Understand, right?
That's always,
When I was an investment consultant, they used to tell us all the time, because we had to go through some very rigorous training, mental training, and they said sanity and insanity is paper thin.
Oh, absolutely.
The difference is paper thin. You never know what straw it's going to be.
I know, and it's a shame, to take your life when that paper-thin line has been crossed.
Right.
And it's a silly thing.
Right.
Suicides last year were due to economic reasons.
That's what most of them are. I
Yeah.
think in Japan,
Yeah, especially
it's embarrassment
among
stuff,
women.
and they can't
Yeah.
see any other way.
Yeah, they can't get out of it.
They can't picture any other way for this to happen. They don't believe there's any other way.
Right.
You know, but there is. There always is.
Right. It does come. Yeah.
It will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to tell you, Giles, I want to thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Not
I really
at all.
appreciate it.
No, me too.
This has
Interesting
been
talk.
It has been.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Remember, it's all on loan, so continue to reach for the stars because you're too blessed to be stressed.